Hello everyone, Dr. Flaggy here. It is Thursday morning and I wanted to post this video on my blog in response to most of your posts. So thanks to all of you who have made your second blog post defining human rights and talking about some of the historical, religious, and philosophical traditions of human rights. I thought the posts were great, very insightful for the most part. So what I'll do probably each week on Thursday after I have a chance to look at your posts is sort of give some general comments and reactions about the content for that previous week, highlight a few things that were interesting to me in what I read on your blogs, and give you a little sense of what's coming up in the week. So this past week, you were tasked with reading a few chapters from the Haas textbook and coming up with your individual definition of human rights. On page 2 of the Haas book in the introductory chapter, he writes that although there is no consensus on the precise meaning of the term human rights, nearly everyone agrees that human rights are invoked to provide the ability to demand and enjoy a minimally restrictive yet optimal quality of life with freedom from interference with legitimate behavior, equal justice before the law, and an opportunity to fulfill basic cultural, economic, and social needs. So obviously a lot that goes into that definition. I want to just pick apart a couple of things there. So first is the ability to demand and enjoy a minimally restrictive yet optimal quality of life with freedom from interference with legitimate behavior. So a lot of human rights deals with things that humans should be allowed to do and their governments should not restrict them from doing. So a lot of individual liberty. As Americans, we would often think of these things being central to the Bill of Rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, things that we should be able to do without interference. They also, in his definition, he talks about equal justice before law. So all citizens of a country, regardless of their religion, their gender, their social standing, or their economic status, should have equal status and equal protections under the law in the tradition of human rights. And then finally, an opportunity to fulfill basic cultural, economic, and social needs. You wouldn't have seen as much of this in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So many of the newer human rights frameworks and mechanisms that we'll look into this semester speak to cultural rights, economic rights, and social needs of individuals. So Haas also talks about how this definition must change and evolve over time as humans redefine their perspective of what is desirable and what are the rights that humans should enjoy. And he also talks about human rights being perceived as a means, not an end. So the goal is not for these rights in and of themselves to exist, but the goal rather is for humans to have the opportunity to lead what's known in philosophy as the good life. So the good life, again, is an evolving understanding, and human rights are a means by which people can enjoy that life. So many of you hit some of these high points from Haas's definition and brought in your own opinions when you gave up your definition of human rights in your blog posts. And I really appreciated seeing some creative thoughts there. And I want to emphasize that throughout this course. Obviously, anything you're talking about, you need to be able to justify your argument and cite it in the text. But I'm really looking for your opinion when you hear the term human rights and you're asked to define it. What are the core things that most resonate with you? A couple of things from students' blogs this week that I wanted to point out. One was Carolyn Barton. In her post, she talked about human rights being rights that should be enjoyed by humans. So when we look at laws and frameworks, there's two questions. Is this a law reflecting the way the world is or the way the world should be? And many of the rights established in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, more and more, and in more countries in the world today, as time has gone on since they were first written, they are starting to more reflect how things are. These are concrete rights. There are mechanisms for enforcement. As we get into future weeks and we look at other rights, further expanding, you'll see more and more that they're more of an aspirational statement. They're not backed up by strong enforcement mechanisms. They don't necessarily have resources behind them. Rather, they're a statement by the writers of this is how we envision the world being in order for all humans to access the good life. And as you might imagine, these types of rights engender a lot more debate. Is a lot more room for contention, and are these truly universal or not? But something to think about as you read different human rights articles. Is this describing the way the world is now or very easily could be, or is this more of a broad statement about how things should be? Another one thing I wanted to point out was from Sarah Witt's blog. She talked about when she wanted to write her personal definition of human rights. She thought that the definition must apply to all, to all people, regardless of culture, circumstantial things, or their economic standing. She brings up a good point. If we're truly talking about universal human rights, by universal, they must apply to all people. So that really means that when we're truly thinking of universal human rights, it has to be sort of distilled down to a more basic level. Each country accounting for its own cultural, economic, and religious realities is going to establish their laws and rights, but for universal human rights, they should serve sort of a bedrock that would apply to all people throughout the world, regardless of, again, as Sarah mentioned, culture, circumstances, and economics. So building upon that, you all looked in chapters 2 and 3 at some of the religious and philosophical foundations of human rights. I think one thing I would point out is that there are multiple religious traditions and philosophical traditions from all over the world, which you can really see evidence of in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Many of you spoke about Christianity, quite possibly because that's your own personal religious tradition, but there are many others as well. Tabitha Blackwell talked about the role of Confucianism and the evidence of sort of human reason and logic in the preamble to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So try to keep an open mind to these different perspectives and look for that evidence in these modern human rights mechanisms and articles. As far as historical examples, I would also point out, and many of you wrote about different historical movements. There were Western traditions, there were Eastern traditions. And also, when we think of human rights, it's a very political term, but it extends beyond politics. One of the historical movements some of you talked about was the women's suffrage movement, obviously a political movement. Others of you wrote about labor movement of the 20th century. So you see human rights extending beyond the political realm, but also to economic, social, cultural, and other aspects of life. So all these religious and historical and philosophical traditions that you read about in the first 3 chapters of the Haas textbook really culminated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which you read. And so for the most part, that's a document that's widely recognized and established as these are universal rights that humans should enjoy. As we go further into more modern development of human rights, more recent general comments and statements from the UN and other human rights bodies, you'll see, again, a greater sense of divergence, less agreement about are these truly universal human rights as those bedrock claims that were made in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are widely recognized to be. So next week, we'll expand past the publishing of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and we'll look at modern development of human rights post-World War II. And I'm also asking you to look at a current event, the story of Rahaf al-Qunun, an 18-year-old young woman from Saudi Arabia who fled that country, claiming that her human rights were being restricted, and was recently granted asylum in Canada. So certainly a very interesting story, one that has gotten a lot of press in the news recently. I'll be interested for your take on that case. and how you can relate it to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that you read about this past week, and maybe some other more modern developments that you'll read about this coming week. Generally, I will try whenever possible to incorporate a current news story into our weekly topics. We may spend a few times coming back to Rahaf Al-Qunun's story since it is so pertinent, but hopefully we'll also involve some other stories as well. So with that, before turning you loose for next week, the module is posted, your reading assignment is posted, and the blog discussion prompts are there. I did want to take a few minutes to talk about sort of what an ideal blog post looks like. So you'll be getting my feedback with a grade on your first blog post on Monday. I'll try to send those out on Mondays. The reason I'll send them on Mondays is that gives you time to make your post on Wednesday, to respond to at least 2 of your classmates by Friday. So then, I'll have time to read both your post and your comments, which are a part of your grade, and send that grade into you. So as you get your feedback, I try to, provide you evidence of what you did well, areas that I'm looking for an improvement. And I want to just cite some of your classmates' examples as you're thinking about, okay, how can I improve my grade or make a stronger blog post? So there's a few parts in the rubric that I hope you look at and refresh yourself on weekly when you make your post that determine what your grade is for your blog post. The content of the post, that's worth 50 points. The quality of your blog post, that's worth 30 points. Visual appeal, which is worth 10 points, and then your response to 2 or more classmates' posts, which is worth 10. So I wanted to just give you an example from your fellow students from their post yesterday of really an ideal post in each of those areas. So sorry to put some of you on the spot, but it's for a good thing. So hopefully you can be proud of this, and many of you did very well. So as far as quality, first content, I would encourage you to look at Richard Neely's blog. Richard, I think he did a good job of covering, the 3 different discussion prompts. He hit everything, addressed all the questions that were asked in the assignment. And I think he did an especially good job of putting out his own argument, so his own definition of human rights, his own understanding of the historical and religious movements that he wanted to speak to. But then he put his own opinion. He cited some short supporting quotations from the text to build on that argument, and then he sort of wrapped it up again. Here's what I said, here's what Haas said, and here's what I think it means. So I think that was a great example of covering all the points, showing some depth of thinking, and having a balance between your own opinions and ideas, and also supporting those arguments from the assigned reading. So excellent job, Richard. I encourage you all to take a look at his post. For blog quality, one I'll just point out, and again, there were several very good high quality blogs. One I'll point out was Caitlin Taylor's. I thought she had a really engaged writing style. Something I'll mention in some of your comments is that I want you to write these blogs, and the reason I do a blog, not the Canvas discussion post, is I want you to be in the mindset of communicating these ideas to a general audience, to people beyond just your classroom. So, her style was really engaged with how she opened up the blog post and sort of invited the reader in. It didn't read as, here was the assignment, here's the questions, and here's my answers. It was, I'm going to be writing about a topic on human rights, and I want to involve you, the reader. She had an engaged writing style, and also it was very clear that she, read her post before publishing it. I didn't see spelling mistakes, grammar errors. Make sure that you are checking these because it is something that you're putting out there for your fellow classmates, and possibly after the end of the semester that you put out for a broader audience. So excellent job, Caitlin. I'd recommend if you're looking on, okay, what's a quality post look like, I'd recommend you take a look at hers. For visual appeal, again, several good ones here. One example I'll pull out was Elena Sanders. I really liked how Elena, she had an interesting title for her blog post. So rather than just, blog post 2, it was, I think she said, I am a human, what are my rights? So sort of summarizing what is the theme of that blog and having a nice appealing title. She did a good job of embedding a couple images that reflected what she was talking about, putting them in with the body of the text so that it really flowed and it was appealing looking. And just the structure. She sort of built, the opening paragraph flowed into the second prompt, flowed into the second prompt, and the argument built. So it really was nice how it just sort of looked building onto one another. So those were three examples. One final example I'll point you to is someone who really hit all those very well was Carolyn Barton. One thing in particularly I liked with her blog post, well, first of all, she hit the content, covered all the topics, clearly edited for grammar and spelling, looked really, it was really well done. She put titles for some of the different prompts. So as a reader, I was able to tell, okay, here's what she's going to be talking about now. Here's what she's talking about now. It helped to just give it some organization and flow. She did a good job of incorporating some pictures, a nice, big, clear, consistent font. So well done overall. So again, I was very pleased with all of your blog posts. And so if you get some feedback from me, please take it as a recommendation for, I think you have great potential and here's how you can take it to another level. And again, just wanted to highlight a few of your classmates' posts that you might want to take an extra hard look at for these different areas if you have some questions about sort of the ideals that I'm looking for. So again, welcome to the class. I was very excited to read your posts. If you haven't posted yet, please be sure to do so as soon as possible. As you know from the rubric that, or from the syllabus, that submitting your assignments on time is required to get full credit for each assignment. So, and if you have any questions or concerns, I know there's been some emails about, how to access different people's blogs and sharing invitations. So, we just kind of bear with us as we get things rolling, but I think we're getting there. And any questions or concerns that come up as you move into the next week of the course, please don't hesitate to let me know. So thanks again for all of your hard work on these posts, and I look forward to continuing our conversation next week. So again, you can look out for an email from me on Monday with your grades for blog post 2. And all the prompts for the third blog post are posted. So I'll look for your blogs next Wednesday night, and you can expect another sort of video post from me next Thursday. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend, everyone. Take care.